Scary stories to tell if you dare. Collected folklore retold by Joe Oliveto. The Black Dog. John Brent lived with his family in a big house near town. One night he couldn't sleep, so he went over to the window to look out at the yard. As he looked outside, he spotted something looking at him. He squinted to see what it was. And the yard was a big black dog. John had never seen it before. It didn't move or even make a sound. It just sat in the yard, looking up at him. John stared at the dog for a few moments. He was a grown man, but some reason, this dog scared him. Usually, he would have gone outside and chased it away, but something was different tonight. After some time, he simply went back to bed. When he woke up, the dog was gone. John became very sick soon after that. His family spent a lot of money for him to see the best doctors around, but he kept getting worse. During this time, he saw the dog in all sorts of places. Sometimes, it was sitting outside by the road when he drove to see one of his doctors. Other times, it would follow John as he went into town. No one else ever saw it until the night John died. His family stood around his hospital bed when they noticed a look of terror on his face. They turned to see what he was looking at. It was the big black dog. No one could figure out how it got all the way up to the hospital room. They chased after it, but the dog ran away. They looked down at the halls, but no one could find it. Soon, they decided to go back to John's room. When they got there, he was dead. The Haunted Treasure. Everyone knew about the treasure. Years ago, a pirate buried it somewhere in the county, but no one knew the exact spot. One night, an old woman had a dream. In it, she saw that the treasure was buried between the roots of a big tree in a nearby field. At first, she didn't think much of the dream, but the next night, she had the dream yet again. And the night after that. Each time, there was more and more detail. She told her two grandsons about the dream. They said they would go out to find the treasure. Then they would all be rich. Be careful, the old woman warned. You must be completely silent when you dig. The pirate killed one of his crew and buried him with the treasure, so his ghost would guard it. If you say a single word, you'll wake him. The grandsons promised they would be completely quiet. When they got to the tree, it was very dark out. They went late at night so no one would see what they were doing. Everyone in town wanted to find that treasure. They didn't want anyone else to know where it was. For an hour, one grandson dug a big hole between the roots of the tree, while the other stood guard. Then they switched. The other grandson dug for about half an hour. When his shovel hit something solid, he leaned in to take a closer look. "It's the treasure chest," he said, turning to his brother. "We're rich!" But his brother didn't look happy. His brother looked scared. When he turned back around, he saw why. Standing in front of him was a tall man with anger in his eyes. He wore old pirate clothes. And had a scar across his neck. He ran towards the two brothers, reaching out to grab them. They both sprinted away, running through the field as fast as they could. When they got home, they told the old woman what had happened. They described the terrible man who chased them. "You forgot my warning," she said. "That was the ghost from my dream." The next morning, they headed back to the field. When they got there, the big hole they had dug up the night before was completely filled in, as if they had never been there. Somehow word got out about their story, and people in town talked about it for years. A long time later, some other young men heard it one night from an uncle. They drove off to find the treasure. When morning came, people found their car parked in the field near the tree. but no one ever saw those young men, ever again. The prison. Ellen lived down the road from the old hospital. It had closed down before she was born, but everyone said they used to lock up crazy people there. Some of them were even killers. A lot of people thought the place was haunted, but Ellen didn't believe in those sorts of things. One night, she was having a sleepover with 3 other girls. They all started telling scary stories about the hospital. The other girls said that the ghosts of the people who used to live there still roamed the halls. "That's dumb," Ellen said. "Ghosts aren't even real." "Oh yeah?" another girl said. "If you're so brave, why don't you spend an hour in there?" "Fine, I will," Ellen said. "There's nothing to be afraid of." The girls headed out to the hospital. It was dark and shadowy. Near the front, they found an open doorway where they could sneak in. One of the girls pointed a flashlight inside. There was a hallway with a small room at the end of it. "That's the room where they kept the really bad people," she said. "Ellen, you go in there and close the door behind you. We'll wait out here for you. If you stay for an hour, we'll know you're as brave as you say." Ellen went down the hallway into the small room. She closed the door. The other girls waited. Soon, they thought they heard the sound of Ellen screaming and someone banging on the door. "I hope she's okay," one of the girls said. "She is," another said. "She's simply playing a trick on us." However, the screaming and banging didn't stop. Soon, the youngest girl got really worried. "We should go check on her," she said, "just to make sure." They headed towards the room. Even with the flashlight, they could barely see. When they got in front of the door, the sounds suddenly stopped. The youngest girl opened the door and pointed the flashlight in. Ellen was nowhere to be found. "She's just trying to fool us," the oldest girl said. "She probably snuck out of the room and is hiding somewhere." They searched and searched. They called out Ellen's name, but she never answered back, and they never saw her again. Milk bottles. Many years ago, an old man ran a shop in town. One day, a pale young woman walked in. "Can I help you?" he asked. The woman didn't say anything, but she pointed at a milk bottle. The old man sold it to her. She walked out without saying a word. The next day, she came to the shop again. When the shopkeeper asked her what she wanted that day, she pointed to a bottle of milk, like the day before. And again, she still didn't speak a word. The same thing happened the next day. Later that night, the old man told some of his friends in town about this strange young woman. So when she went to the shop again the next day, some of them followed her to see where she went after she left. They followed her through town, but she walked very fast and they couldn't keep up with her. The men saw her walk up a hill and into a graveyard. She stopped by a grave by a tree. Then they lost sight of her. The men found the grave it looked like she had stopped at. It belonged to a woman and her new baby, who had both gotten sick and died just a few days earlier. They wanted to know more about the woman, so they got a few other people from town and dug up the coffin. When they started to lift it, they thought they heard a crying sound coming from inside. The townspeople opened the coffin. In it was the body of the young woman. Her baby was in her arms, but the baby was still alive. It looked weak and small, but it was alive. Beside the baby and its mother were 4 empty milk bottles.